Welcome back to the famous Corkscrew and, of course, the famous Laguna Seca, home to the Monterey historic reunion. And as you can see, beautiful day here looking down across the famous Corkscrew that has seen many an incident, both 2 and 4 wheels over the years. But we are celebrating this weekend a half century of historic racing, started by Steve Earle back in 1974, and I believe there was some 60 to 70 entries back then, and now we have over 500 participants here this weekend. It truly is something quite special, and not only is the track revered, we heard from an Englishman who'd come for the first time to Laguna Seca, and it is a bucket list place. I grew up watching Laguna in MotoGP and World Superbike, and of course it's in the middle of the night. But to see the glory of the Monterey Bay and the beautiful coastline that is part of Carmel by the Sea, you don't forget it very quickly. And the track hasn't changed a great deal. Some upgrades here and there, but the outlay remains the same. New bridge for Mission Foods and WeatherTech, and a very, very good addition to what was certainly quite an antique part, that bridge, but now as you can see, with ramps as well as stairs, so brought up to modern specs. The RVs in the distance, that's another tradition here at Laguna. You can come up and stay, and a lot of folk do throughout the 2 weeks here, and take a nice view looking down over Turn 11. Here is our next group coming up, and as you heard from Scott Dernick there, it is Group 11, and that, of course, is the Pedro Rodriguez group. And as we mentioned before, this year, for the first time, instead of commemorating and celebrating the marks, we celebrate, as our groups, some of the drivers that were part of that era. Pedro Rodriguez, the famous Mexican driver, he and his brother Ricardo from Mexico, and of course the Mexican Grand Prix now still celebrates their ventures into world motorsport. Pedro, of course, made it to Formula One and raced in Formula One from 1963 to 71, winning the South African Grand Prix in 1967. And he also won the Belgian Grand Prix. Only 2 Grand Prix won. He won that in 1970. And he raced with his brother as well, and they together raced in races like the Paris 1000 and won that in 61. 24 Hours of Le Mans, driving with Ferrari in 57 and 70. Pedro on the podium at Le Mans, an impressive 40 out of 94 races. That is impressive. But again, I think if Pedro Rodriguez isn't the top of your names of that era, there's a reason why he has been chosen, and I think it's true for Parnelli Jones and for Mario Andretti. Et al., our group names are named after, is they really do represent all-round driving ability. In other words, it's not like these drivers just made it in NASCAR or made it in IndyCar. They were able to jump from race to race, whether it be Can-Am, Indy, NASCAR, whatever. And I think it was their ability to race any form of car, including in Parnelli Jones' case, off-road as well. So always fascinating to see how it all comes to be. And Scott Dernick has joined me in the booth. Thank you, Scott. I'm very interested in what you were saying there. Tell us more, as they say. what of this group? I'm just explaining who Pedro Rodriguez Trophy is and why he suits perfectly the 61 to 75 FIA manufacturers. And no question that perfect group for him. So, Scott, tell us what we've got on display here. I say display, but what we're about to see race, but we're seeing them lined up.
This is a pretty wide-ranging group, a lot of different cars. Pedro Rodriguez was a very promising young racing driver from an immensely wealthy family in Mexico. So Pedro and his brother Emilio were very well funded at a very young age. They were racing professionally by the time they were 16. In fact,
they did all the motorcycles before they
did motorcycles before they did that. And And they were really cultural heroes in Mexico. In fact, the racing track in Mexico City is named, Dos Hermanos, Rodriguez, the Rodriguez brothers. So they raced anything they could get their hands on. They would race canoes if there was enough water around. So it's an appropriate name for this group. Pedro Rodriguez was famous for being quite fearless and also quite obstinate and stubborn. There's the very famous picture of two 917s on the Mulsanne Straight bumping into each other. Now, John Wyer was the team principal at that point, and he had given strict orders as to how things were going to go. And as soon as Pedro got between the bit between his teeth, he literally was bumping his teammate out of the way. So that should tell you the personality that we're dealing with.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, and like I said, I was just saying before you came in that what I love about the names that we're celebrating this weekend in our group names, rather than celebrating a mark, we're celebrating the names, as we should. Great names that have raced here in America and around the world, but all of them all-rounders. And I think Pedro fits into that category. It's not just you could say, oh, yeah, he was a Formula One driver from this era to this era. He had a huge career in long-distance racing, especially in sports car racing, which was what we were looking at here. But well known around the world.
Yeah, and that's the way racing was back then. I mean, in the 60s especially, many of the Formula One drivers would drive Formula 2 and Formula One and sports cars because they were generally, remember, sponsorship was just coming into racing. So these race car drivers were an employee of a racing car company, whether it be Lotus or BRM or Porsche, whoever it was. And they said, look, this week you're going to drive the Formula One car, and then we're going to go testing in the Formula 2 car, and then, you've got to see how the defrosters work in our road car, and then, we're going to go sports car racing. So in Pedro's case, when he drove for BRM, not only did he drive the BRM Formula One cars, he also drove the BRM Can-Am car. He drove some of the smaller bore BRM sports racers, and then, also drove whatever they told him to drive, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Was the way it worked, yeah.
Well, I'll be listening to Scott Durnick, who's joined me, and I'm glad to say at a perfect time because we've got a delay in proceedings here. We've had some either oil or, I don't know, something is down, but either way, we've had the trucks out clearing it.
There's a debris flag on the front straight here at start-finish, so I would suspect it's turn 2. And a lot of times what happens, you'll get a lot of oil in turn 2 because you're reaching maximum velocity here, and then you slam on the brakes really hard. So if you were leaking oil, it accumulated in your under tray or something, and now it all dumps. And then you have the privilege of driving through your own oil, which puts you off, and then usually a few more poor souls with you. So but the track does a great job here of getting things turned around and cleaned up, so they're doing as fast as they can.
Does give me a chance to talk about what you do, Virtuoso Performance. Tell us how you're involved and what you do in terms of preparation for this event.
Well, this is one of our biggest events of the year, and our business works the same way as if you had a horse stabled somewhere. The cars live with us. We store the cars. We maintain the cars. We do the mechanical body work, everything to the cars we do in-house. So our clients basically get an arrive and drive experience. So they show up, their driver gear's here, their car's here, everything's set up and ready to go. They enjoy a good time with their family and friends. And then they go home and we load up the circus, take it back home, and then get it ready for the next time. Yeah,
and you mentioned an interesting point, Kev, that I think people sometimes miss the fact that when you think about historic racing, you think about old guys, with a cloth underneath the car and all the rest of it. And it's far from that. To get these cars now fettled and prepared is very much using all the science of modern day because you need it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're running more modern cars. We're not racing old MGs and Spitfires anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but as these cars have escalated in value, people have become much more demanding about the way they're maintained. They're protecting their investment. But also, we're running this weekend, for example, a 2011 Le Mans car. The car's got 280 channels of data acquisition. It's got a very sophisticated suspension. It requires, someone who understands those systems. And that's one of the challenges that our industry faces. It's very difficult to attract qualified people into our industry. But we still have the demand for someone with the necessary intellectual horsepower, if you will, to help maintain and develop the cars.
Yeah, it amazed me when I first started doing historics. I was transfixed by, I said, well, surely the tires are modern. And they go, oh, no, yes, they're new, but they are the original make of tire that was used in the day. And that's how particular this sort of setup is.
Well, yeah, and that's a very important point. In many of the classes of the earlier cars, they absolutely legislate, look, you're going to run a Dunlop L Series. In Formula Juniors, you're all in Dunlop L Series. There's nothing to talk about. In other groups, it's either a Dunlop L or a certain Hoosier tire. And part of it is because the biggest single change in automotive technology in the past 50 years has been tires. Modern new tires are so good now, the compounds are so good, that they would impart chassis loads that would literally overstress the old cars. And that's how vintage racing learned this. In the 80s, people could put on whatever kind of tires they wanted to, and they showed up. And then when they started snapping suspension components off the car, the organizers realized that a little bit of adult supervision was required.
Good point. Well, let me ask you this. We've had a lot of competitors that have come over with their cars, and we heard one from Britain earlier today, but Australia, New Zealand, I know, love the idea of coming for, a few events, but making this the granddaddy, the reunion here at Laguna. What are the mistakes that perhaps people might make in terms of preparation that they could get wrong, that they may not have expected, and then lose out the chance to get out on there by making a simple preparation mistake? Or should they be coming to someone like you because you know what those pitfalls might be?
Well, in terms of compliance with the technical specifications, the rules are fairly standard. All the rest of the world complies with FIA regulations. Australia, especially, they're really officious. Britain has their own club rules and then the FIA rules. But they're mostly geared toward driver safety. When it comes toward competitive intent, especially American V8 cars, there's rules about not having roller rocker arms and not having certain other components. You can't have a dual plane intake manifold in a car like a Corvette or a Cobra. So they're trying to make it so it just isn't checkbook racing.
Right.
The notion is, look, we're not going to use modern technology to build a big block Chevy that goes to 9,000 RPM because we can. They couldn't do it in period, and they try to keep it as they could now. The one class that you can do almost anything except change the configuration of the car is Can-Am. Just in period, it was a wide open class, and within reason, I drive a Can-Am car, and it's got a little 9-liter Chevy in it, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of power, a lot of torque. So there's really a place for everybody, and you can engage at your own level of competition.
When was your first reunion?
I started racing in my 20s, and I've been doing it ever since. Yeah.
What's your favorite then? What have you enjoyed racing over the years?
I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to drive almost everything that I ever dreamed of. I love driving Formula One cars because they're so responsive. I've had the privilege of driving a 917-30 Porsche, which was just absolutely fantastic. It must have been so demoralizing to race against that car because I have a Can-Am car from the same era with a Chevy in it, and in period, those cars would have raced against each other, and that car was bringing a machine gun to a knife fight. The 917-30 was just so
to see them
superior.
go down the Malzahn, in unison was incredible.
Just fantastic. But every car has its own personality. They're all a lot of fun, again, it's really a privilege just to be able to work on the cars and develop the cars and work with the owners. It's really great to have that relationship.
Well, we just saw the safety car going out there, so we hope to get some action in a moment. But just looking at this very impressive 33-car field for the Pedro Rodriguez Trophy, looking at down, chevrons, Porsches, anything standing out to you that you'd want to draw our attention to? We over the weekend we try to get to every car, but obviously with 33 cars in a 20, 30-minute session, it's not a lot you can point to. But
well, the diversity of this group is pretty crazy. You got Cal Meeker in a 294. Cal's a really good driver.
Yeah, he's been around forever.
That's a real, I think forever and a day. I keep telling him how old he is.
Every time I get a historic sheet, Cal Meeker's usually at the top 5.
Yeah, no, Cal drives the Lola, and Cal drives a ground effect Tyrrell, and he also drives a GTP car. So, he's no stranger to cars with a lot of downforce and a lot of power. Ethan Shippert is another really good driver. He's driving the B16 that belongs to Greg Gregory. So it'll be interesting to see those guys go at it. Cal has got a power advantage for sure. But Ethan's also a really good driver.
And I'm guessing Alex McAllister, son of...
Yeah, son of Chris McAllister,
yeah.
another really good driver. I mean, all these guys at the front of this grid, I'd have no problem racing right next to them. They might have a problem racing right next to me, but well, they're all really good heads-up guys. Alex McAllister's been driving for a long time. Couldn't have a better teacher than Chris. I mean, when you've got a field where Gunnar Jeanette is in 11th
He's
position,
11th, I know.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Now, in fairness to Gunnar, all the cars in front of him got a little more horsepower and might be a little bit heavier. But the 910 is a fantastic car to race. 1,200 pounds, Porsche six-cylinder power. They're just magical cars to drive.
Are there cars you think that sort of alluded to the reunion over the years that you sort of think? I mean, I look at the exhibition later today, and it's impeccable. Never mind. My jaw dropped this morning, and I'm not usually impressed, having done a few of these events, to see that array, that what we're going to see on exhibition, from a 1924 Bentley to a 1990 Mercedes C-Class. Incredible.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually going to be driving one of the exhibition cars, and the
what are you driving?
The Alfa Romeo Type 33. Yeah. So the grouping of cars and the cars that have raced, here is just fantastic. But what's happened, as happens with almost any rare and beautiful thing, as the values have escalated, people have become a lot more conscious of what they're worth and the risk they're exposing them to. You've really got to hand it to a guy who takes out a GTO or a D-Type Jaguar or any number of these cars, even the Formula One cars, and goes wheel to wheel with someone else. That's one of the great things about vintage racing. There's a lot of misconceptions, and people ask me, that vintage racing, that's just not what it is. It's like, well, if you're going to run a 119 here in a vintage Formula One car and you don't think those guys are trying, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
So
that's handy right here.
Yeah.
What, in terms of handling of the group that we've got here, and we'll get a closer look at some of them, what would you say would be a handful? Because like you say, we've got a real kind of smorgasbord right across there from the years.
Well, let's see. The guy in the Ford Escort, twin cam, to be ahead of all the 911s, that's pretty impressive. The cars at the front of the grid, boy, the T294 is a sweet thing to drive. The B16 and B19 Chevrons, again, really sweet things to drive. Lola T70, that could be a handful. The 3Bs are very good cars, but certainly not as easy to drive as the other lighter cars. All these cars have their strengths and weaknesses. T70's got over twice the horsepower of the sports racing cars, so when the road straightens out, he's got an advantage. But at a track like Laguna, the best drivers are only going to have about 40% full throttle time. So all the rest of the time, cars like the T70 are carrying around that big engine and all the weight of it, and it's really not doing them a lot of good.
Well, Laguna's kind of unique in that respect, in that it doesn't really have a major straight, does it?
Right. Laguna and Sonoma are very similar in that regard. My big block Can-Am car here is very difficult to run with a small block car, and these 2-liter cars, the B19, will kill me here, and they've got a third the horsepower. But you go to a track like Road America, you don't know where they went after the
exactly,
straight.
Yeah. That long run from 14 to the first corner of Road America, and these cars would be pretty.
Yeah.
There's Alistair McAllister.
I mean, a good build block car, I'll get to 220 at Road America.
Wow.
And I'll only get to 160 here.
Well, we are looking at the man we were talking about, Alex McAllister in the Chevron B19. Mm-hmm. I love that big mirror. Does it work? I wonder.
Yeah. You really want. Everybody says they look kind of dorky, but you really want the big mirrors, because in a group like this, now Alex is fortunate the way this group is. He's up at the sharp end of the stick, but boy, if you're in the middle of this group, the leaders are going to be lapping you within a couple laps, and the closing speeds are quite profound. So the more mirrors, the better. It's the only part of the car that doesn't wear out no matter how much you use it.
Yeah, no kidding. And, of course, the mirror itself, invented here in the States.
Yep.
Ray Haroon
in Indianapolis.
First winner at the Indianapolis. I love that fact. When I finally went to the museum and saw that car, and said, "Are you kidding me? He won because he was the first guy to drop the kind of, well, he was one of the first to drop the spotter,
right?
And say, okay, I got the mirror. I don't need the extra weight."
And it was funny because back then the spotters got their position by a combination of mechanical skill and low mass. So they were like horse jockeys.
So who would start the car then? That was another guy.
Yeah, that was another guy. Yeah, usually to start it. But
they must have worked that out.
Yeah. All right.
So here we go.
Here we go. We're getting going here.
Finally, sorry about the delay, folks. We had a little bit of dirt down. As you can see, there's a line of kitty litter being put down to make sure that people aren't slip sliding away, but that's all part of historic racing, isn't it? So, we are led by Cal Meeker on the right-hand side in that Lola T294, and alongside him in the 44 is Ethan Shippert, and as you say, very good drivers. You have to be a good driver to drive one of these beasts, don't you?
Yeah, Ethan also has a prep shop business and a very, very good driver. Really knows his stuff.
Keep an eye on Bill Cord in the 151 in third position. And Jim Storer and Mike Sweeney, they're down as two drivers. Are they going to sort of swap out between the weekend?
Some cars are shared between two drivers, yes.
Here we go then. Celebrating half a century of racing. This is our first running of the Pedro Rodriguez Trophy Race 1. And away they go. An amalgamation into Andretti turn 2.
You can see Ethan taking a really aggressive line there, really keeping Cal honest.
Cutting him off as they dive through 3. But a good clean start.
Yep. And it's important to point out Cal's got a 2-liter Hart motor in there that's probably close to 300 horsepower.
Okay.
The car that Ethan's driving is about the same weight, but it's got a 1600 Cosworth FVA or FVC if it's 1800, but certainly doesn't have the power of the Lola. Now, number 81, that T70, that's a 550 horsepower, Chevrolet most likely. But again, he's also a lot heavier than those two cars. You can see under braking how the gaps actually open up because the T70 just can't stop like the cars in front of him.
Good start by the 27, Gerard Lopez in that Lola T70 from 1969. He's in about, fifth place? As they dive into the corkscrew. This has been, it's been an incident period for quite a few cars already this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to say, Christopher Byton
that's the guy we spoke to earlier who's come over from England.
He is wheeling that T70. I mean, that is not an easy car to drive here, and to be staying out in front of all these 2-liter cars, that's quite impressive because he only really gets to use his horsepower advantage right now when he comes onto the front straight.
Well, he is a good example of everything I've been talking about in terms of preparation. Yep. 6 weeks, he said, it's kind of the prep time it's taken, but first time here at Laguna and enjoying the heck out of it, I can see.
That's another David and Goliath battle, kind of like you would have had in period. The B19 that Alex McAllister is driving, and the T70 behind it would have been adversaries in the day. The T70 is a little older than the B19, but the T70 Coupe had a very long competitive life. Yeah, it's unless Cal makes a big mistake, it's going to be tough for Ethan to get by Cal.
He's not known for that.
Well, it's not that. It's horses for courses. The B16 was meant to be an endurance car. It would run the Spa 6 hours. They ran Le Mans. They ran a lot of endurance races. The T94 is more. 294 is more of a short track sprint car. It's the perfect car for this track. I mean, he absolutely has the right weapon for this fight.
Just looking up that 1969 Lola T70 we were talking about, WSC 1969, raced at Daytona, Sebring, Brands Hatch, Monza, the Nürburgring, and driven by the likes of Bonnie Norinda and Jackie Oliver. So that tells you everything you need to know.
And all big, long tracks, right?
Yep.
They're all big, long tracks. Back in the day, the well-heeled enthusiast, would have more than one race car. You have more than one golf club, right? You need different ones for different tracks, different things, and that was kind of the pattern back then.
So coming up the first king under the bridge, that light blue number 4, Joey Bajolard. Is it Bajolard? Beaujolard in a Lola T298, beautiful car.
Mm-hmm. You can see he's struggling with a little bit of understeer if you look at the front wheels, and that's because the drivers are having to take a much different line because of all the oil and the kitty litter that's been laid down. So it's funny, you watch the more experienced guys and they're going around it, and you look a little bit further back in the field, you know, they've not really altered their line very much in the first part of the course there, the approach to turn 2 and turn 3.
It always amazed me looking at cars like this, just how small the wheels, especially the front wheels, are with the amount of power that you're putting down to the ground.
Yeah, well, these cars are running on 13-inch wheels, 13-inch diameter, almost the whole field. The Porsches are running on bigger wheels, and the T70s are running on 15-inch wheels. But, you know, compared to modern-day stuff, I mean, you know, an electric Fiat has bigger wheel diameters than these things.
Just ahead of him, John Fudge, another storied driver.
Yeah, John Fudge drives a lot of cars. He's got the, he's the Bizzarini that he goes really well in. And he certainly isn't afraid to drive any of them.
Yeah, he's a perennial member of the historic club, if you will, around America. I've seen him at many events, as are all the drivers here. I mean, I would have thought the competition just to get in on the grid on this would be, I mean, you really want to be part of the 50th, right?
Yeah. Yeah, see how these guys are changing their line through turn 2 here a little bit, and they're all getting, you know, Alex is taking a little bit tighter line to stay out of the kitty litter.
Yeah.
But Alex is really smooth, really heads up, just a really, really nice guy to race against.
Cal Meeker has done what you expected him to do. He's kind of taken off.
Yep.
But it's still Meeker and Shippert and Cord. As we started, we've been looking at Alex McAllister in 4th position. And then the Brit, Baton in 5th position. And Lopez, who we've mentioned, Fudge, Beaujolard, and Hagar in 9th position. And Rosenthal rounding out the top 10 here in our first running of Group 11. Is there any particular car you're looking, I mean, you're driving, but is there one you wanted to have a closer look at?
You know, this whole field is great cars. You know, like you, I was quite enthralled with the cars that are on display. Wow. There's some that you rarely, if ever, see, and that was really neat. And, you know, every car is interesting in its own way. I'm more drawn to the purpose-built cars, like this group, for example.
Yeah.
And that's why I know a lot of the drivers and the cars here. Certainly one of my favorites is Chris McAllister's Ferrari F1 car.
Oh, yeah. That was the 80 of Paul Hager in, 9th position, going up the hill. The all-green number 80. Chevron B23.
There's big speed dynamic here, so you're nearly the top of 5th gear when you're approaching the corkscrew. Then you come all the way down to 2nd gear, make this turn here, and then before you get into turn 9, you short shift up to 3rd. You'll take that turn in 3rd, then you'll shift to 4th for turn 10.
Here's an odd question for you, but when these cars were in their day, the Chevrons, the Lolas, the Porsches, obviously we didn't have the digital age that we have. I mean, if you were driving a Lola or a Chevron, you'd be like wanting to know what the Lolas, you know, where could we improve our car to go better? So how did the espionage, if you will, could it only be done at meetings where you literally had to walk around the car and say, well, that's interesting. That wing looks longer than ours, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that was going on. You know, the fact of the matter is the technology was advancing so rapidly that what was really fast 2 weeks ago probably wasn't really fast the other week. I mean, you look at the diversity in this group. You look at Cal's car versus some of these other cars, and it's like a spaceship, you know. But now, make no mistake, Cal's a great driver. You still have to drive the car, and he does an excellent job of it. So this is a good group to see the spectrum of just a short period of years, how much cars changed and evolved.
Well, Kev's been beebling about. Kev, what's going on?
Lovely, thanks, Johnny. Well, next out on track then, we've got a whole host of endurance cars going to be running in the Hurley Halewood Trophy. 1, 2, 3. Close it. Lovely, sorry, we're very noisy down here in the pre-grid, but lining up on the grid in car number 5, the one and only Mr. Zak Brown. Zak, great to see you here. You're getting set and ready to go. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Tell us what you're going out in today.
Jaguar XJR9 Group C car, so something I grew up racing, feel very privileged to be racing it this weekend, and should be a fun race.
Yeah, it should really be a fun race. I know this isn't the only car you're racing here. People might not realise when we don't see you on the telly at the Formula One, this is what you like to do on your weekends off, isn't it?
Yeah, it can't keep me away from a racetrack, so everyone's on vacation, so am I. It just happens to be at a Laguna Seca.
Great setting, great racetrack. We've seen you here many times before. Just give us a word about this car that you're sitting here. Some of the numbers on this are staggering.
Yeah, it's a cool car. It ran in 87 and 88. Won a handful of races with John Watson and Lammers and Nielsen, so it was something I grew up watching. So it's I went from having the little die-cast car to being fortunate enough to get the real version.
That is the great thing about this event. It doesn't matter who you are, we're all car guys, we're all enthusiasts, and whether you saw it as a die-cast car or your grandfather or your father racing it, you get to see it here. And the Rolex, 50 years on Monterey for doing this. It's in great health, isn't it, historic sports car racing?
It certainly is, and this is the best event of the year. I look forward to it. I come to it every year, and it just goes from strength to strength.
And you are a busy man as well, because you're also going out in Group 10 Formula One cars. You've got your 1980 FW07.
Yeah, I qualified third in that, so I feel like we're pretty competitive. And then also going out in my BMW 320i in the IMSA class after that. So today will be a bit of a workout.
And you're a busy man. Straight from here to the Netherlands right after this. Things are looking good for you in that world as well.
Yep, Formula One season's been strong, so 10 races to go. A lot of racing left, but Netherlands, then on to Monza, and then Singapore, and keep going from there.
Zak, thanks for talking to us ever so much. It's really great that you take the time to do it. Go well, we'll have our eyes on you, and race good, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Johnny, back to you. How about that? Zak Brown getting set to go. What a car.
Yes, it's a car I remember well. I was at Le Mans back in the late 80s and saw that go into action, and loved watching it. It was those the Rothmans colours and the silk cut colours. I know they're cigarette companies, but those liveries are etched in my sort of endurance racing mind, and that particular car definitely. But what a great statement. I'd hate to be Lando and Oscar Piastri, because he really truly is dedicated. I was watching MotoGP. I'm still a motorcycle fan. And there he was at the British Grand Prix the other week. I was like, give it a rest.
Yeah.
And he admitted that it wasn't really a weekend off. He had sponsors. I think it was Motul, were one of his sponsors. So he said, the reason I'm here, I'm doing some business. But he does love coming to racetracks, and he just loves racing.
Anybody who really likes this is thoroughly broken all the way through to the core, and we all share that.
No question. And he really is. I remember him in a McLaren here a couple of years ago, right at the start, rolling start, and he got pushed wide here coming up this first corner, and I thought, oh, it's a little bit scary, but he kept his foot in. What were you pointing at then?
Well, we've got a white flag waving on the front straight, so there's a slow-moving vehicle, an emergency vehicle out there. And here's an example of lap traffic. Now, there's Dave Hagan pointing by the Lola T94. Cal really appreciates that, a demonstrative point by, so you know that the driver you're passing has seen you and he's not going to move over into you. Maintaining situational awareness is really important. It's really easy to get all excited and adrenaline rush and tunnel vision, and you can unintentionally put someone in danger.
Yeah, I mean, you've really got to have your wits about you. Over the years, I've talked to folks who you've got half a mind on the car that you're driving and understanding it, because it's not a car you drive every day, as Cal Mika does. Take the checkered flag.
Cal takes the checker.
But you really do have to think about what your own capabilities are in the car. You want to enjoy it, but you've also got to be looking in those mirrors, because you never know. You don't know the full field of 33 and who's got what and who's behind the wheel necessarily.
Yeah, and that's it. You never know the car that you've raced against for years and years, and a driver that now someone else is in the car. So really, you notice that Cal did not go past Dave until he got a point by. He could have easily passed him earlier, and Cal also waited for a safe part of the racetrack to go by. He didn't try to, cut him off in the corner or anything else. So, again, a little bit of cooperation goes a long way.